Well, right now the mission is for American troops and Marines to stay with the Afghans, to train them, to be partners, buddies, if you will. But at the same time, they're being told, keep your distance. So when medical training takes place, when fire exercises take place, now American troops will have a bodyguard standing by. And that definitely erodes trust, and it cuts away at the mission. For years, we've been seeing orders coming down telling American troops, take off your helmets, take off your sunglasses, and now we're seeing orders, yes, build trust, but make sure you have a bodyguard present.
It's a tangible change, and that, of course, Richard Engel, NBC's foreign correspondent. Now, this weekend, he, as the NBC team, was reporting from Afghanistan, and you heard what he said. U.S. troops used to be told, remove your helmets, your sunglasses, appear less aggressive, connect with the Afghani population. Now, you got to bring a bodyguard, and the separation with U.S. and Afghani troops, very tangible. There was a somber milestone in Afghanistan this weekend as the U.S. death toll in our country's longest war has now hit and now surpassed 2,000. The 2,000th American death in Afghanistan may have been the result of yet another so-called green on blue attack. That's a firefight that broke out between U.S. forces and their supposed Afghan army allies. However, it remains unclear if it was an insider attack or not. Initial reports indicate the firefight resulted from a, quote, misunderstanding between Afghan army soldiers and their American counterparts. Insider or green on blue attacks, they are a growing trend. Last month, these attacks were the leading cause of death for American troops. General John Allen, he expressed his palpable frustration with these attacks during an interview with 60 Minutes that aired last night.
Well, I'm mad as hell about them, to be honest with you. We're going to get after this. It reverberates everywhere across the United States. You know, we're willing to sacrifice a lot for this campaign, but we're not willing to be murdered for it.
At a certain point, if these attacks continue, American people are going to say, we've had enough, right? Why are we training these people if they're murdering us?
Well, that may be, in fact. It may be the voice right now that we're hearing. The key point is for us to understand that the vast majority of the Afghans, and you've lived with them, you understand these people, they're with us in this.
You could just see it and feel it. And this is the guy who's the biggest champion of this mission. He said this is the last thing he does before he hangs up his uniform. And it's going from bad to worse. And if that wasn't indicative enough, today, yet another attack. A suicide bombing this morning in eastern Afghanistan killed at least 14 people. Andrew rejoins us. And Andrew, we're learning a little bit more about this, aren't we?
We are, Rich, and that suicide bombing this morning again came one day after we reached that grisly milestone, and the Taliban has now claimed responsibility for this attack.
A suicide bomber riding a motorcycle packed with explosive rammed into a patrol of Afghan and NATO forces today in eastern Afghanistan, killing at least 14, including 3 NATO members. While the nationalities of the NATO troops have yet to be confirmed, most of the troops patrolling that area are American.
The whole idea here is that we have a counterinsurgency operation that is intended to get out among the people, to build trust with the people. And when you do that, you are very, very vulnerable.
The blast came a day after reports that the U.S. death toll in the war in Afghanistan reached 2,000 troops.
He's not just a number, he's a person. He lived.
Kimberly Taylor's high school sweetheart and fiancé, Josh Rath, was killed in Afghanistan in January 2009. She has now become involved with the program that provides support to young women widowed by war.
I just want to reach out to all of them as much as I can to let them know that there is hope.
Relations between international forces and their Afghan partners have been pushed to the breaking point by a surge in insider attacks by their supposed Afghan allies. Still, NATO's deputy commander insists such attacks will not weaken the bond between international and local forces.
If you visit people in the field who are working together closely with thousands of interactions every day, you see strong, trusting relationships resulting in cooperative operations delivering success every day in the field.
The deputy commander of NATO's military force also said the Saturday incident that killed 2 Americans and 3 Afghan soldiers may not have been an insider attack and may have, in fact, involved insurgent fire. Rich?
Okay. Let's get to the politics at the end of the segment and just get to policy for a second. 27 months from now, we're supposed to get out of here. Raise your hands if you really think it's going to be markedly different in the next 27 months. I'm probably a bigger hawk than most of the guys at the table here, but I finally have given up fighting with Andrew on this one. Why? What's the point anymore?
There was a point. There was a point that said there were infestations of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan that were being protected by the government. The Taliban were part of that, but not al-Qaeda. And instead of focusing on those pockets that needed to be cleaned out, we went in and did what bad nation-building efforts have been tried in that area for 2,000 years. We ought to be out. We ought to be out not because we're angry about the loss of life, which we are, but because it's not working. It was an untenable mission at the beginning. We should have wiped out the al-Qaeda pockets and left and leave them to themselves.
And Dominic, to me, if there needed to be a button on this thing, it's the following. In the same interview that 60 Minutes did, they also sat down with Dominic Carter, the guy that we've propped up, we've protected, we spent billions of dollars in, forget just the treasure, the blood too of American soldiers. And listen to what Hamid Karzai had to say about the American counterparts who've kept him from being strung up. Take a listen.
What have we done wrong that they're still able to continue to hurt and damage people? That is, for me, as the President of Afghanistan, the most important question. And that is the question that I've engaged with the United States almost daily.
And are you satisfied with the answers you get from them?
Never, no. Never. That's been one of our difficulties. I have letters from General Allen who says that the security in Afghanistan is a lot better and the people are waiting for improved governance.
Do you agree with him?
No, I don't agree with that.
Why has the U.S. failed to address the issue with Pakistan, do you think?
Perhaps politics.
What has been the cost of that?
Heavy for us. Disastrous for us.
Would Afghanistan look completely different today if the issue of sanctuary and safe haven in Pakistan had been dealt with years ago?
Absolutely. Completely different. Much more peaceful, much more progressed, much more stable, and a society that would have been thriving on its own. Afghanistan feels let down.
That ungrateful SOB, Dominic. When I heard that, and I just thought, imagine you're one of the families who just lost a soldier, and we know we're out of there, okay, in 2 years and change, and you hear Karzai saying that, ugh.
He's playing to his base, obviously, his local base in his country. But I couldn't have said it better. If you're an American family watching this and you've lost a loved one, you're saying to yourself, why? Why? For what? The argument has been made, listen, and I think most Americans would support this part. Fight the war on terrorism there as opposed to fighting it here in America. But at what cost now? I mean, I don't even think that most of us can articulate what we're actually doing and why we're going to remain this long when Americans are being slaughtered.
Especially with the developments where you can't even, trust the people that we're training to not turn a gun on you. And I know that they're a small minority and it's a tiny fractional thing and there's a lot of good that we've done there. But
that may be what they really think.
Okay, and I hope, let me be Pollyannish and let me just hope that's the case. But again, I've reached a point, if it's not going to be different in 2 years and change, it's my kid now. Do I want my kid to be the last kid? And it goes with every war I know, but we've reached the point about what is the point?
And the sad part is, I mean, to my mind, we reached that point years ago. And we've been going over the same thing again and again and again. I fault the Obama administration on this.
Can you give me a plausible argument?
Well, this is
why
the
we
war,
keep doing
this is the war that President Obama designated the good war, the necessary war, the war that we had to fight. And then at this point he says, he changes his mind as the politics change, and he says, no, now we have to get out, and sets a deadline. That's not the way to get out. If you want to get out of this successfully, you want to leave the enemy uncertain as to when you're going to leave. You want to leave room for you to build up the Afghani army. Regardless of whether you think we should be there or not, we should leave Afghanistan
okay, but here's my
better.
question. I was with you, but what gives you
so that
any
the Taliban
rationale?
do not come back
Everything's, I'm with you, except what gives you any rationale why 2 more years of training, forget the money we'd spend in the interim, forget about the additional insurgent attacks. What gives you any reason to think 2 years from now that military will be better equipped, more self-reliant, the Taliban will be more decimated? What makes you think it'll be any different then than now?
Because you train them. That's very
But
simple.
we've been training them.
And
it's getting worse, not better.
I wouldn't say that. And there's a lot going on diplomatically. You're talking about Pakistan, you're talking about India, you're talking about the geopolitics of the area. Afghanistan, neighbors on Iran, this is more complicated. We need to have an ongoing presence there. How we maintain it, what we do with it, how we build up the Afghan army. Those are all complicated questions that the next president of the United States has to deal with.
Ask the Soviet Union how that worked. Oh, that's right, you can't.
We're not, we have no interest in Afghanistan except cleaning out the enemies of the United States.
Richard, how are you going to feel when the Taliban take over and start slaughtering, like happened in Cambodia? Everyone who wears glasses, who speaks English, women who want to get an education.
Awful thing.
How do you feel about that?
But if we are going to take that as the standards where we commit American treasure and American blood, we're going to be around in half the world.
Remember,
what I want to do is make sure that where America has enemies, the American military goes and cleans them out. Where we're building nations, I'm not so sure.
Whether we should have committed to begin with is another question. But President Obama said this is a good war.
President Obama?
Yes, he did.
He started this war?
He said this was a good war. He did the surge in this war.
Did the world start in 2008?
No, he did do the surge. He didn't do the initial thing. But all I will say on this is, everything that you said I argued with this table. But I have zero confidence, not through our troops, and the heroism and the sacrifice that they're doing. But I have zero confidence that 2 years from now it's going to be any better. And how do you look at the faces of the families in the interim and say it was worth it? And that's, for me, the toughest one. And there's not a simple answer. All right, we're going to be right back, everyone. We're going to switch gears, and we're going to come closer to home after this. Please stay with us.